Everybody, welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we'll be recapping week 16 of the NFL season. And well, Josh, I'm officially joining you in the looking forward to 2024 category. My Broncos are out of things, so I'm ready for the draft already. I'm with you. I'm ready for draft content. And hopefully Puka Nacua didn't end your guys' fantasy football seasons like mine was as well. So hopefully your guys' holiday weekend was a little bit better than mine, and you guys advanced to the championship. But how was your holiday weekend, Stores?
If there's one positive, I'm sick. I've been under the weather. It's been tough. I feel like I've been sick like all ever since it got cold. I've been in like a nonstop battle of being sick. Fantasy's been a disaster. Chargers have been a disaster. But if there's one positive, I won picks. So I'm gonna crown myself. Oh, it's my computer's not even gonna let me crown myself.
I'll crown you. It's my punishment.
Yeah.
I'll place it on you.
I'm gonna crown myself today, and that's my one positive from this weekend. And also, the Chiefs losing to the Raiders is also a good Merry Christmas. Just personal vendettas right here.
Yeah, I mean, some crazy outcomes on Christmas that the Ravens kind of stole Christmas for the Niners. They were the Grinch. And I guess we'll just move on to our MVP debate real quick because we got a new favorite again. It seems like every week we have a new favorite, but Lamar Jackson's now a pretty big favorite, a minus 160 favorite to win MVP. He's followed by CMC, Christian McCaffrey, who's second, Tua is third, Purdy, Josh Allen, and Dak are right behind him. Do you agree that Lamar Jackson's the most deserving after kind of going into San Fran, beating Brock Purdy, completely outplaying that whole team? Do you agree it's Lamar right now?
Yeah, I think Lamar's quietly been the most underrated, most difference maker this season. Yeah, Lamar has played quietly the most MVP football of anyone. I still think, I mean, Purdy's, I still think it's neck and neck with Purdy. I think Purdy just had a really bad game. It was horrible. In fact, it was just quite awful, almost bad enough to really knock him out of the MVP category. But other than that, Purdy's been dealing this season. But Lamar on a consistency level with these Ravens is just he's the dude. He's that dude this year, and you can't deny it. He probably is the most deserving, him or McCaffrey. Um, I mean, just with the consistency aspect of things, Lamar Jackson has just been on fire all season long, and he's just been playing really, really good MVP football.
Yeah, I think we were both kind of saying the last few weeks that Lamar should be second. He's kind of the MVP candidate that no one's been talking about. And yeah, after beating Purdy in the way that he did, I think it has to be Lamar. He played himself into this position, and he's playing the Dolphins this week. So I think the winner of Tua versus Lamar, whoever kind of outplays the other, will probably end up winning the award at this point of the season. So that's a big game to monitor. And we'll kind of transition into our stud and goof of the week segment because we got a lot of studs to talk about, including Lamar Jackson, who was the biggest stud of all, really, who completely rose his stock in the MVP race. But we'll shout out a few honorable mentions: Brees Hall, George Pickens, Puka, Nacua, all very much boosted your fantasy teams, helped you advance to that championship, hopefully. And Joe Flacco, who was throwing to our stud of the week, Amari freaking Cooper. Flacco and Cooper were playing on rookie mode. Cooper had 51.5 PPR points. If you had him, you won in fantasy, and if you played against him, you lost. It was pretty simple. That's kind of how big of a performance he put out. 11 catches, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He broke the Browns' receiving yard record in a game previously held by Josh Gordon, which was a really popular game. It was a legendary one. So just incredible from Amari Cooper.
Yeah. I had Amari Cooper in one of our leagues, and I forgot to take Josh Jacobs out of my lineup 2 weeks, and I lost my 10, which is just absolutely brutal. I thought Josh Jacobs was going to play, and then whatever in my mind, I forgot to check right before Christmas, and he doesn't play in the week before, so just ridiculous. But yeah, Amari Cooper, I when I was watching that game, and it was MVP Flack. I mean, 2013 MVP Flacco out there just dicing it to Amari Cooper, and he could not be stopped. And it really was for if you had him, in your fantasy playoffs, you won. It was just plain and simple. A guy in our league had him in our main league. He ended up putting up like 181. I think it was like one or maybe 190, which is the biggest total of the season. Underdog story. He's making it to the championship now, which is crazy. And then on the other side of things, if you had Mr. Brock Purdy like Dan, then You're taking a long bus ride home. 4 interceptions, worst game of his career, gets taken out of the game. It literally got Purdy out of the MVP conversation, I think. Honestly, it's crazy to say that. Just one game can really affect it. But when it's a primetime game, this big of a game, and you go out and you look like that, it was pathetic.
It couldn't have been more of a disaster. He did play himself right out of the MVP race. You said it perfectly, and that's why he's the good for the week. He really did play himself out of the race, and he got me 2.4 points in fantasy in my semifinal matchup. So he's going to be our good for the week just for that.
I mean, do we question if Purdy is a good quarterback after that performance?
No,
Or
like if we're
the
gonna really get
overreaction?
into it, a lot of those tips were picked and very volatile. Like if we're really gonna get into those picks, I the first one was pretty bad. Kyle Hamilton did make a great play. He was trying to force it to Debo, his star, a lot, but honestly, a lot of those picks were pretty volatile against most teams, not Kyle Hamilton. Hamilton, I don't think most of those are gonna be picked.
You're probably 100% right, but it's going to be tough for Purdy because this is the game that's going to probably define him over any other game this season.
100%. And with that, we'll get into our game recaps. We got a lot to talk about. We'll start off with the Thursday night football game. The Saints went into LA and lost to the Rams, and they kind of lost to Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua really put out for your guys' fantasy outputs. He's just an absolute star. You said last week that Stafford's playing like the most underrated quarterback in the NFL right now. He really is playing like a top five quarterback, and no one is talking about it. It's incredible, and he's just keeping it going. And he could be in the MVP race if people watched him more and paid more attention to the Rams, because what he's doing to this team that is clearly not as talented as a lot of teams that are like up there in the MVP race. I think Stafford really does deserve a lot more flowers. He's playing some perfect football, and you shouted it out last week, so good call on that.
Yeah, I just got to go to another thing. I think Sean McVay is, I think at this point, with, I mean, a roster that, quite frankly, we were laughing at the beginning of the season, and now or in the playoffs as of right now, this is a playoff football team. With this roster, with Puka Nacua, with Kyron Williams, with old Matthew Stafford just playing, lights out. It's absolutely incredible. And yeah, my biggest, takeaway from this is Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are for real right now. And what they're doing with this team is unreal. And they're both quiet candidates for, I mean, Sean McVay should, I think, in my opinion, I think he's overtaken Steichen and all these other people. I think he should be coach of the year.
Yeah, I 100% agree. He's not really being talked about it. Like he's not really in the conversation like he should be, because it's kind of just to be expected because we know how good of a coach he is. But he deserves to be in that conversation. He probably deserves to win it at this point with what he's doing with that roster. So shout out to Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford for really keeping this team really, really hot and competitive. And we'll transition into fantasy. I'll get out my Alvin Kamara rant, who I also had in my semifinal matchup. Brock Purdy and Alvin Kamara did not come through for me, but yeah, Kamara, 9 carries for 19 yards. I don't know if Aaron Donald is just the greatest run defender of all time, which he might be, but Kamara, unacceptable for performance. And Dennis Allen was pretty unacceptable. They were not throwing the ball to Kamara at all. And we know that's kind of how the Saints offense has been ran through this whole season. So not throwing it to your best weapon out of the backfield is pretty crazy to me. Chris Olave did have a huge game, so you love that. Rashid Shaheed kind of stays as that dart throw. You know he's going to get a long touchdown like every month. So I wouldn't start him in your guys' fantasy championship at all. But for the Rams, you're starting Stafford, Kyron, Puka, and Cup. It's pretty obvious. But what is your takeaway from Demarcus Robinson? He went 6 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. And this is like his third week of really balling. Are you messing around with Demarcus Robinson in the flex now?
Not yet. I don't know if I'm comfortable enough. I think he has had some pretty good weeks, and Stafford's been known to, all of a sudden you'll see a few good Higbee weeks. It kind of bounces back and forth. Cup, 6 for 52. Kind of funny. Stafford only completed to only four different receivers, which is kind of crazy. There's only four different receivers that caught a pass in this one, which is kind of an interesting stat. Usually you'll see at least 6 to 8. But I'm not
Love to
quite
see that
there.
in fantasy, though. You love to see the condensed target. So
Yes, you do. You do love to see it, especially from your top dogs. But I don't think I'm there yet, especially heading into championship weekend for most of y'all. So I don't think I'm there yet. But man, if you had these Kyron Williams, Puka Nakuas, Yeah, I mean, you're probably most of you guys are probably in the fantasy championship, which is crazy. It kind of sucks in our league. We didn't even have the chance to have either of these guys on the waiver wire, which most leagues did. Um, of course, they were all gone in our draft. It's very, very competitive. Um, but yeah, just crazy, crazy, crazy stuff from Puka Nakua and Kyron Williams. And yeah, on the Saints side of things. Chris Olave, he did come through for you fantasy owners, and yeah, Alvin Kamara, which are pretty much the only two people you're even targeting in fantasy. Raheem Shaheed had a pretty good game. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think he's kind of like Gabe Davis at this point. You can expect a good game, a blow up game every now and then, but I wouldn't be trusting it in this championship.
Not to toot my own horn, but if you guys watched last week's episode, I told y'all to start Gabe Davis after a 3-week goose egg. Absolutely went off. I just need to get that out right now. I called it. I'm right. That's something I need to be crowned for again. Um, but yeah, I called the Gabe Davis week, and if you guys, if anyone actually started Gabe Davis, you're welcome because I called that shit.
I'll crown you for the Gabe Davis take in a few games here because we're going to talk about the Bills next. But we'll get on to the first Saturday game. The or Bengals went into Pittsburgh and got wrecked by the Steelers 34-11. George Pickens just outran the entire Bengals defense. Had a huge day. Mason Rudolph came through for Christmas, and Jake Browning was kind of a complete disaster in this one. He threw 3 picks and he really just hurt the Bengals and made it so they didn't really have a chance in this one. And yeah, it was good to see the Steelers kind of rally around a new quarterback and play play better football than we've seen over the last few weeks. So it is good to see this from the Steelers, who are still in the AFC wildcard race.
It's crazy to be talking about the Steelers still competing for an AFC wildcard spot when they had two brutal losses, the freaking Cardinals and Patriots in back-to-back weeks. But then they come and do this. This was probably the weirdest game of the week for me. Jake Browning underperformed. I mean, he still threw for 335 yards, but he had some pretty bad picks, 3 of them. Obviously didn't have Jamar Chase in this one. He was injured, which was a big loss. Joe Mixon couldn't really find any footing in this one. But yeah, like you said, on the other side of the ball, Mason Rudolph kind of delivered a Christmas present for the Steelers, keeping them competitive in this playoff race. Najee Harris had a pretty good game. It definitely wasn't a Jalen Warren week this week. He did get a little bit through the air. And then George Pickens, man. George Pickens, after he's getting memed about his blocking and getting out of the way because he didn't want to get hurt. He goes 4 catches, 195 yards for an average of 48.8 yards per reception with 2 touchdowns. That was a Christmas present for fantasy owners. And if you actually had George Pickens, which is a funny little side note, the guy who had Amari Cooper in our league started Amari Cooper and George Pickens in this one. So just immaculate luck. Never seen anything like it, but wow. And also he's a Steelers fan, so there you go.
Yeah, George Pickens doing his best Randy Moss impression. That was just absolutely insane. Really fun to watch. And for fantasy takeaways, like, I think you could start Najee. I think Najee is a fine start off volume, but you know that there's a really, really low floor. But are you starting George Pickens now? I mean, you kind of have to after that.
With upside, yes. At this point, yeah, George Pickens, after that performance, upside is there. And if Mason Rudolph seems to like George Pickens, I think you got to go off of that big play, which is very probable. George Pickens comes up with some of the most ridiculous catches. So, yeah, at this point, I think I am riding with George Pickens.
Yeah, he led the team in targets. Like I do think you got to ride the flames if Rudolph's playing. You know, he's gonna feed him. And for the Bengals, not really too many takeaways other than you're not starting Browning anymore. That's just you can't have that in your championship. And then Mixon and Higgins are must starts. Higgins puts up a big performance, 5 catches, 140 yards and a touchdown. He also had a really long one. And Tyler Boyd's like a really, really, really deep league dart throw, but that's it.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd's good for about 5 catches for 50 yards when he's wide receiver too, and then you hope he finds his way into the end zone. But yeah, there's just not a lot of upside with Tyler Boyd. So yeah, like you said, unless you're in a deeper league, probably stay away from him.
100%. And we'll get on to the Saturday night game. The Bills went into LA and played the Chargers, and the Chargers played pretty well. It was 24-22, a pretty tight one. You did call this one in the preview. I was thinking it would be more of a blowout, and you were saying you could even see the Chargers winning this one. They could have won this one pretty handily. It was a really close one. The Bills kind of had to squeak it out at the end, kind of sweat it out at the end. But Easton Sticks Chargers put up a good fight. We're 16 weeks into the season. I still don't know who the Bills are. Like last week, the last 2 weeks, I thought they were back top AFC playoff contender, but now they look like the midseason Bills. So I genuinely do not know where we are with the Bills. They have some tough games coming up, so I guess we'll see. But they're just a really, really confusing team. So I'll let you cover this one. And I'll let you pat yourself on the back for predicting Gabe Davis to have a legacy game.
Yeah, I definitely predicted that Gabe Davis legacy game. I knew it was due. I knew he was going to be going up against Mikey Davis, who let the Raiders put up 63 points pretty much on him. But yeah, this was from a Charger standpoint, this is great. This is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to play competitive, but we wanted to lose because we want to improve our draft position, which we ultimately did. So it was a fun game for me to watch. Ultimately, it was fun to be competitive. It was fun to hang in there, but it was nice to lose at the last second in Chargerly fashion to get that draft spot. And obviously, Justin Herbert's not in there. You got Easton Stick, so you're not expecting much. But yeah, on the Bills side of things, interesting game because it you never know week to week which Bills team you're getting. Could be a Bills team that goes and beats, the Eagles and the Chiefs, or you could be getting a Bills team that loses, to like the Patriots. You don't know week in and week out which Bills team, and that's kind of the scary thing about this roster and this team right now is they're either hot or they're cold, and it either goes one way. So if they can just find their consistency throughout the season, I think heading into the postseason, they're going to be a very, very dangerous team. But yeah, it was a confusing game. Stephon Diggs, man. What is up with Stephon Diggs? I have to just point over there for you guys, of course, fantasy implications. So I'm sorry about Stephon Diggs. I don't know what's been going on with this man. It seems like every year he starts out extremely hot. He's like wide receiver one through like the first like 12 weeks. And then he just gets in his head and he like starts falling off. It's kind of crazy.
Let me give you his fantasy point production the last 6 weeks. So this week in week 16, he had 5.4 fantasy points. In week 15, he had 6.8. Week 14, he had 4.4 fantasy points. Week 12, he had 16.4. Good for him. Week 11, he had 4.7. And week 10, he had 4.9. That is bad. That is bad.
That is horrible. I don't know what's up with Stephon Diggs. Maybe he wants to play himself out of Buffalo. I don't know, but this is the Buffalo team that also just went and beat the Cowboys, where his brother was talking a bunch of smack. But I don't know, man. But yeah, I mean, I think at this point with the Bills, you never know. I don't know. We don't like you said. The preview of this game is we don't know the identity of the Buffalo Bills. They are a confusing football team, and you don't know which team you're getting each week. And honestly, quite frankly, I thought they should have lost this game. I don't
With
think they played well enough to deserve to even beat Easton Stick and the Chargers with, a depleted team where coaches just got fired, players are getting cut, and I don't think they even really deserve this one. They just barely squeaked out a win, which I guess is good. It's, at least you'd rather win this one than try and figure it out next week, but I don't know. This team scares me.
No, if you watch this game, you completely forgot that the Bills were maybe the hottest team in the NFL. Like respect to Gift Smith. He had the Chargers playing good, and the Bills really were not handling the Chargers at all. They had to squeak by that win. So yeah, shout out to Gift Smith. That's a takeaway, and we'll move into fantasy takeaways. I guess we'll start with the Chargers. Keenan Allen might be back this week, so you can dabble in starting Keenan Allen. I think he's the only star. Austin Eckler is a really, really low option. And for the Bills, you see Leonard Fournette replacing Latavius Murray finally after like 2 months. I don't know what took them so long, but yeah, Lenny was also the kick returner. That's crazy to me. But yeah, James Cook, he gets all the volume. He didn't have the greatest game, but you got to start him because of the volume. Josh Allen's obviously a must start, and you're not going to mess with Gabe Davis. But Stephon Diggs, it's really gross at this point, but you kind of have to start him off name, which sucks.
And shout out Cameron Dicker, the kicker. Dude's got ice in his veins. I think he's if he's available or you have him, he's a must start every week. Because Dicker, the kicker, is rolling 5 for 5, hit like 350-yarders. He's not perfect on extra points this season, and he's 96% on all of his field goals this year. So Dicker, the kicker, looking like freaking Justin Tucker out there. Love it.
Oh, if you watch this game, then it's a pretty obvious takeaway that Dicker is the best kicker of all time. It was insane watching this game, what he was doing. And I guess the last takeaway is Kincaid is not a star. He was rough again.
Oh yeah, Kincaid is benched till further notice. I do not know. Yeah, it's the story of the Bills. We can't figure him out, but yeah, until further notice, Dalton Kincaid is a bench.
100%. With that, we'll get on to the first of the Sunday games. The Lions went into Minnesota and squeaked by a win against the Vikings 30-24. And I'll just shout out the best running back duo we may have ever seen. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They are playing some good football. Jahmyr Gibbs, 15 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. Montgomery, 17 carries, 55 yards, and a touchdown. Seems like they do this every week. They both get multiple touchdowns. They both get over 50 yards on the ground. It's an incredible running back duo, and I genuinely have been struggling to think of a better running back duo than, like, I don't know, Ricky Williams, Ronnie Brown with the Dolphins. I don't know. This is a really fun stuff we're seeing with the Lions offense. On the opposite side, the defense wasn't really fixed with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming back. Their secondary is still a big problem, and Nick Mullins was kind of getting hit. So that is still scary.
This is just a fantastic game for me to watch because I'm just watching my future coach in action and what he's cooking up with these running backs, what he has Jared Goff playing, what he's doing with Khalif Raymond as his wide receiver too. It's some pretty special stuff. So shout out Mr. Ben Johnson, future coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Love to see it. Love to see what he's doing with Sam Laporta this year. This game was actually, it came down to the wire, and I thought the Vikings, when Nick Mullins threw that ridiculous pass to Justin Jefferson, who went up in triple coverage and got absolutely, just railed over the middle by 3 dudes, and then but came down with it. It was wild. And then Nick Mullins right after that throws a ridiculously bad pick to lose the game. But he threw for 411 yards and 4 interceptions to go along with 2 touchdowns. But it was a weird Vikings game, man. It was strange. And I don't know. This Vikings team is still competitive. They just keep losing. They're kind of like the Chargers of the NFC. They just lose by just a little bit each week, and it's just like they're finding ways to lose right now. And honestly, I don't know. What do you make about Nick Mullins? Do you think Jaren Hall should get a shot? Do you think it should be Josh Dobbs? Who do you think the quarterback situation should be?
Nick Mullins was with his best Jameis impression. It's pretty hilarious. I don't know. Nick Mullins is probably like the best to compete right now, but also Jaren Hall's a pretty safe, like competent quarterback himself. So I can see him kind of having the Vikings in a better situations and, playing a lot safer, not 4 turnovers. I don't know. That is a hard decision, to be completely honest, because the Vikings are still kind of in that playoff race, and Nick Mullins has been there. So maybe you ride with Mullins until he completely shits the bed. I don't know. That's honestly a tough question for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's tough. They have 3 quarterbacks that are definitely kind of all near each other on skill level wise. At this point, I think I would switch it over to Jaren Hall just because I feel like he'd play a safer brand of football. And Nick Mullins just kind of playing YOLO ball out there, which doesn't hurt because he is putting up points, but ultimately it was kind of their demise at the end when he threw that. I'll just say it's pretty bad. That pretty bad pick to lose the game.
It was bad. And I just remembered it could be both Charger head coaching candidates in this one, Brian Flores or Ben Johnson. So they were kind of going against each other in this one to see who the Chargers' new coach is, but that's fun. And Justin Jefferson, he did his best job for the Vikings not to lose this game. He did everything he possibly could have. Like you said, he made that crazy catch where he got murdered. And yeah, he comes down with everything. He's fun. You go to fantasy takeaways, obviously Jefferson's a must start. TJ Hawkinson, heartbreaking, tore his ACL. He probably helped you all get to the fantasy championship if you are there and you're a TJ Hawkinson owner. So that really sucks. Hopefully you can get like a Hunter Henry type, Isaiah Likely off the waivers. I don't know, but really unfortunate. So Justin Jefferson is kind of the only must start. Jordan Addison had 1 catch for 2 yards. I don't know what was up with that. Ty Chandler, you could start for touchdown upside, but he had 17 yards. The Vikings had 17 total rushing yards. So that's a little bit scary. But on the Lions side, you start everyone. Sam Laporta had a down week. It doesn't matter. You start every line because they're electric.
Yes, sir. You said that perfectly, and it was a pretty fun game to watch. Came down to the wire, and Justin Jefferson looks like he is back, 141 yards and a touchdown. Good to see that from Jettis.
And speaking of fun game to watch, we'll get on to the next one. The Browns went into Houston and beat the Texans 36-22. Joe Flacco really put on a rout on Davis Mills and Case Keenum. He did his thing. And yeah, like I said in the stud of the week segment, Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper were playing football on rookie mode. It was incredible. This picture kind of sums it up perfectly. The whole Texans team chasing after Amari Cooper. He absolutely put the team on his back. And shout out to Joe Flacco. 3 straight 300-yard games. Deshaun Watson has 0 as a Brown, if you were wondering. So that's an interesting stat. It's literally getting to the point where there might be a quarterback battle in the offseason with this team if Flacco keeps going into the playoffs. And I mean, no Brown quarterback has had production like this in a long, 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 long time. So it's really fun what Flacco's doing there.
Oh, 100%. I'll say it every single time. 2013, Joe Flacco is back and better than ever, and it's awesome to see.
And we told everyone start him in fantasy. He had really low projections, and guess what? QB1 of the week. So hopefully you started him and he got you to your championship. This whole Browns team is just playing fantastic football. They're all complementing each other really well right now. They're clicking on really every single cylinder. They have a top defense, and Amari Cooper getting 265 yards just feels fake. So this team has really a lot of upside, and it's something we weren't really saying a few weeks ago. So it's crazy what's happening.
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy. And to shift to the side of the Texans, they need CJ Stroud back. He's been out 2 weeks, and you've definitely felt the impact that CJ Stroud has on this team. And ultimately, I mean, the whole Texans team is kind of depleted by injuries. I mean, you've had Nico Collins kind of banged up. You don't have any Tank Dell. You're arguably your 3 best players have kind of been banged up at one point or another during this whole season. But you just need CJ Stroud back. I'm not hitting any panic button on the Texans or anything. You just need your QB1 back, and it's going to be tough. I'm guessing he should be out of concussion protocol this week. It's kind of crazy. He's missed 2 weeks because of it, but I mean, nothing to worry about. When CJ Stroud's back, you're rocking and rolling, and you're fighting, for that wild card spot. Or, I mean, the AFC South is very, very close. I mean, if you win out, you can kind of control your own destiny at this point if you win your division.
100%. Like, yeah, moving into fantasy takeaways, there aren't any takeaways for the Texans because you're getting your king, your savior back next week. So you throw everything out the window this week, and you're excited about the Texans moving forward. And for the Browns, you're excited about every option moving forward as well. I think Flacco is like a must start in the fantasy championship if you don't have a top option. And Jerome Ford, he gets the touchdown, he gets work. Kareem Hunt kind of stole a touchdown, but Amari Cooper and David Njoku, you just fire up because you know they're going to be scoring a touchdown every game with the way Flacco is just slinging that thing. He's launching the ball out of his arm, and the velocity is still crazy. Flacco has some zip on his arm, and it's crazy watching. Some of these throws he was making, he was moving around in the pocket and just hucking it up, and it was perfectly placed. So this is crazy what's going on, and you're happy for fantasy for all Browns options.
You love to see it. Yep, you love to see it. Joe Flacco is awesome. That's my takeaway.
Like you've been saying, it's 2013 MVP Joe
Mhm.
Flacco playing right now. There's no difference. And we'll go on to the next one. The Colts went into Atlanta and lost to the Falcons 29-10. We kind of saw no Michael Pittman equals disaster for the Colts. Don't know how much you can take away for that, but at least we saw Taylor Heineke kind of get things going for this Falcons option offense. We finally saw these options kind of somewhat eat. They still really split the backfield, but we saw Bijan be talented enough to kind of overcome that, have a good week. So you're going to start Bijan in the fantasy championship, even though you're scared as hell about it. And yeah, like I said, not too much to take away from the Colts, but respect to the Falcons for playing hard.
Definitely a stinker week for the Colts, and quite embarrassing, honestly, to lose to Arthur Smith like that. Yeah, this one you want to forget about Colts. I mean, this was kind of your chance. I mean, this was a chance to, quite frankly, overtake your division, get a game ahead. But now they're just battling with the Texans, and they kind of control their own destiny from here. They got to forget about this one and look forward to next week. But yeah, I mean, a takeaway for the Falcons is every week that Desmond Ridder is not touching a football is a win, and you will see it. You will see it for your team. They will play better without Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder is not an NFL quarterback at this point, and it's quite pathetic. He's been out there for as long as he has. And Taylor Heineke, I'm not crowning him as a good quarterback, but he's good enough to keep this team competitive and in games. And ultimately, you got to ride with a better option. And Arthur Smith's got to see that at the end of the day. And at least Heineke was able to get Bijan going a little bit through the air too, which is good to see.
Yeah, 10 targets. You absolutely love to see that for Bijan. That's something we haven't really seen all year, and that's something that Stinky Ritter definitely wouldn't allow Bijan to do. So happy that Sneaky Ritter's out of there. Heineke is their best option for now. Hopefully they can get a really good quarterback for 2024 because they would be a dangerous, dangerous team. Jesse Bates keeps picking off quarterbacks. It's crazy. He gets a pick every game. So the Falcons could be a really fun team if they can just get that quarterback position figured out. And we'll move into fantasy takeaways. Like I said, Bijan gets the 10 targets in the receiving game. So he has a start, even though the running game is just a complete mess for the Falcons with them splitting it between Cordarrelle Patterson, even and Tyler Algier. It's crazy. But Kyle Pitts gets touchdown, only 4 targets, so you're not too excited about it. Drake London doesn't really produce for you, so you're scared about those Falcons receiving options. It's really just Bijan and Kyle Pitts is a big dart throw, and then for the Colts, not too much to take away. It was a terrible game, but Michael Pittman, you're going to start when he gets back. You're not starting any other receivers, and Jonathan Taylor's a start, obviously.
Yep, you just summed that up perfectly. But yeah, Colts fans, forget about this stinker. You're still in playoff contention. You're still fighting for your division. Look forward to next week. And Falcons, please, please don't let Desmond Ridder touch a football again.
If the Broncos would have won, I think the Colts would have essentially been eliminated. So that's crazy. But I'm just gonna go on to the next one. The Seahawks went into Tennessee and beat the Titans 20-17. It was a lot closer than really anyone could have expected. So shout out to Ryan Tannehill, I guess. He didn't really do much. Derrick Henry threw more touchdowns than him, but yeah, just kind of a sloppy game in Tennessee. Not really too much output. It was good to see Gino really feeding those receiving options. I think you could start Lockett, DK, and Jackson Smith and Jigba all in the fantasy football championship. So that's pretty impressive. But they really ran their offense through Kenneth Walker. He didn't have crazy production or anything, but he is that bell cow now, which is interesting. They kind of went away from splitting the backfield. So interesting game. Not too much to take away. We kind of expected the Seahawks to squeak it out.
Yeah, weird game. And yeah, like you just put, just barely squeaked out of this one. I mean, Gino played well enough to win. Titans were kind of all over the board, it seems like. Great game from Derrick Henry, especially for the fantasy championship weekend. You love to see that. He threw one, he threw more touchdowns than Ryan Tannehill, as you mentioned. He got the volume you like, 19 carries, 88 yards, and found his way in the end zone there. But yeah, ultimately it just wasn't good enough. And I think the Titans are kind of in a competitive rebuild as of right now. I think their best chance is just to tank for a better draft spot. Hopefully, you can fix that offensive line. Ultimately, keep whoever's starting for you. I'm guessing it'll be Will Levis, should be the starter going forward next year. But hopefully he's healthy and good, and they can keep him upright. And then yeah, the Seahawks, kind of a weird football team. Just kind of I don't really know how to feel about them right now.
Yeah, like moving into fantasy takeaways, it's weird because you kind of have to start every Seahawk, but you're just not too excited. The potential is not too high because they really spread it around. But like Kenneth Walker gets a lot of work. You have to start him at this point. And Tyler Lockett, 11 targets, Smith and Jigba, 7 targets, Metcalf, 6 targets. Metcalf was the one that got there in fantasy the most. So you kind of have to start them all right now. You're not really too excited about it, but for the Titans, it's just Henry. Hopkins is a gross start throw at this point. 2 for 20 is really unacceptable in a game like this. So I wouldn't even start Hopkins in your championship. It's just Henry.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, kind of a weird game, and it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks finish their season.
And do note, Chigo Okonkwo went 6 for 63 and a touchdown. So if Tannehill is to start again, if it's not Levis, then maybe throw that dart at Chig because it seems like Tannehill really likes him the most. So,
And
well,
Hopkins is irrelevant with Tannehill. Got to throw
yeah,
that
it's
out.
kind of crazy. You would think Tannehill, being a veteran, would like to target Hopkins. That whole dynamic is weird because even in the beginning of the season, Hopkins was completely irrelevant with Tannehill. But
Yep.
we'll move on to the next one. The Packers went into Carolina and beat the Panthers barely, 33-30. I don't even know if I want to say beat the Panthers. And I definitely don't want to talk about the Packers. So let's just not talk about the Packers at all. Let's talk about Bryce Young, though. I mean, if you just watch the game, if you watch any really Panthers football game this year, you can see that he's a good quarterback. He still makes good plays despite being dealt the worst cards I've really seen from a rookie quarterback in a long time. Like this is the definition of just a terrible situation, and he really made the most out of it in this one. I mean, the Packers defense hasn't really been playing bad or anything, but he just really torched them. He made Joe Barry fired. Joe Barry's going to be fired very soon. It's because of this performance from Bryce Young. So shout out to Bryce. Shout out to Adam Thielen. They did good. Chuba got the touchdown, and They should have won this game. Romeo Dobbs didn't even catch that controversial catch at the end. I'm talking about this like the Panthers won because they won the game really, and they won by not winning the game because their draft picks are going to be higher. So it's just a gross game. I don't really want to talk about.
Yeah, no, it is gross, and I'm gonna say the Packers are gross at this point. Packers kind of had an identity for a few games. We're getting really high on them, and now I don't think they should even be considered a borderline wild card team. This was pathetic. Joe Barry needs to be fired, and yeah, it's just, I mean, both of these teams extremely young, extremely, not a lot of veterans on either side of these. But I mean, yeah, Bryce Young, like you said, he's been dealt the worst. And yeah, like you said, if you watch Bryce Young, he's not a bad quarterback. He's just single-handedly, and the fact that he's not injured and he's still up and he's still going at it every week kind of just shows you something about him. And I think Bryce Young, once this Panthers team, once his ownership, and once everyone can get something figured out and they can get him some talent and some anything. They just need to get him anything around him, something to build around. He's going to be a very special quarterback, and they ultimately should have came out on top of this game. I can't believe the Packers just squeaked by. But yeah, this was one of the toilet bowl games of the week.
Yeah, that's a good point. For all the people that were bringing up his durability is a big issue in his draft prospects. Like he's been durable with the worst situation around him all year. He hasn't really been banged up even. So I mean, Bryce Young's durable. He's proved that. He's passed that test. And if you just watch the tape in this game, if you're a Bryce Young hater, just please watch this game. And he made impressive throw play after play. He was driving this team down the field every single possession. Packers defense isn't that bad. I know Joe Barry's bad, but yeah, he was doing his thing. So respect to Bryce Young, and that's kind of the takeaway in this one. For fantasy takeaway, you're starting Chuba and Adam Thielen. It's fun to see DJ Chark have a really good game. I don't think you're relying on that. And then for the Packers, no Jaden Reed or Christian Watson. You kind of knew Romeo Dobbs and Wicks were going to do decent, but they really spread that ball around. So I'm really not excited to start anyone for the Packers. Aaron Jones had a great game. You start him, but receiving options, they spread that ball around to like about everyone. So I'm kind of scared off on about every option except for Jaden Reed if he plays.
Exactly. And yeah, Jaden Reed, obviously we were preaching for everyone to start him. He ended up not being a go this week. But yeah, Jaden Reed is kind of that dude. He's fantastic. So yeah, any week that he's healthy, you start him.
100%. With that, we'll get on to the next one. The Commanders went into New York and lost to the Jets 30-28. Shout out to this game for bringing us the best uniform matchup for the Christmas aesthetic. They definitely delivered the Christmas aesthetic this week. And Sam Howell was benched for a second straight week. Who could have ever seen that coming? And who could have ever seen Jacoby Brissett bringing them back all the way back in the fourth quarter for a second straight week? They looked like maybe this might have been the worst start by NFL team in NFL history in this game for the Commanders. That's how bad Hal started this game off. And it ended 30-28 because he eventually got benched. And again, like last week against the Rams, Brissett went in and threw a bunch of touchdowns, didn't really have any bad plays and made it a really close one. So that's a funny dynamic. I've kind of been clamoring for Sam Howell to be benched a lot earlier than I maybe even should have. And it's definitely aging well. He's not your future quarterback. If you believe he is, I feel bad for Commanders fans. And yeah, I think that's kind of the main takeaway. Shout out to Trevor Siemian for targeting Breece Hall 16 times though, and Breece Hall came through and won that game.
Yeah, this was our toilet bowl matchup of the week. But yeah, Sam Howell, man, 6 of 22. I don't know if I've ever seen a stat like I don't know if I've ever seen anyone go 6 for 22 and with 2 interceptions. I mean, that is horrible. That is probably one of the worst quarterback plays I've ever seen from anyone. So wow, that was just painful to watch. And then you see Jacoby Brissett coming here, and he's just surgical, and he got it done. And this Commanders team would actually be competitive all year if they would have just had Jacoby Brissett in. Which is crazy. It kind of shows you a lot of these teams try and go with upside of like a young player over these like veterans like Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, Josh Dobbs and stuff. And these guys can win games. And it's kind of crazy to see that. The same time, it was nice to see the Jets. Trevor Siemian got a full week in of practice. He looked more comfortable out there. And ultimately, the Jets get a win with a somewhat competent quarterback. He didn't have to play perfect. He just had to push the ball down the field, get it to their playmakers, and that was ultimately the difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch this game, it went exactly how we expected. We've been clamoring for number 14 on the Jets to go out there for weeks now, and he gets his first week with the starters. He gets to practice with the starters, and he finally gets his first start. And he definitely played like we expected. He got the ball out to Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. They really had their best output of the season. Who would have known? And yeah, I thought Trevor Siemian played a good enough brand to make them win. So you love to see it.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully he's the starter moving forward for the last 2 games. But yeah, I mean,
No, he won't be. Oh, he won't be. He played good, but he won't be.
yeah, it's pathetic. I mean, you throw Trevor Siemian when you're losing 28-0, when he hasn't had any practice reps and expect him to do something. But you give him a full week of practice and you get your first win in a long time, and he did what you wanted him to do. He got the ball to Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. That is just the difference. You feed those guys. Breece Hall actually got it done through the air. They had to play the pass a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, it was a toilet bowl, but good for the Jets for starting Simeon this week. But yeah, hopefully he is moving forward, but who knows?
And transitioning into fantasy, hopefully Simeon is the starter because you got Breece Hall getting 95 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, 96 yards, 12 catches on 16 targets in the air. And Garrett Wilson goes 9 for 76. So yeah, you really hope that Simeon is starting if you have those two in your fantasy championship. And takeaways for the Commanders. I don't want to start any of these receivers at all. And I guess you could start the running back if it's Chris Rodriguez, you start him. If it's Brian Robinson, you start him. That's
Yeah,
literally it for the fantasy.
yeah, that's all. And let's get off of this toilet game.
Last takeaway is the Commanders need to fire everyone. They need to nuke the team. They need to get everyone out of there 100%. With that, we'll get on to the next one. The Jaguars went into Tampa and beat the Buccaneers 30-12. Mike Evans is kind of out here making a Hall of Fame case. He's just played incredible football this year. He's coming down with a touchdown every single game it feels. And about a month ago, the Jags were 8-3, tied for the fewest losses in the conference, and now they're 8-7, coming on a 4-game losing streak, just kind of beginning to see their playoff hopes slowly slip away. So it's really competitive in the AFC South now with the Jaguars, Colts, and Texans all kind of being bunched up. And you called this one. You called the Buccaneers having more stars and them kind of being able to get the job done and outplay this Trevor Jaguars team. And I was expecting the Jaguars to be a little bit better, that kind of bounce back, but no, they're really cold right now. I think I'm kind of almost out on the Jaguars with the way that they're playing. Trevor is playing bad football. He's being memed a lot on Twitter, and it's kind of deserved at this point. He isn't playing good football.
No, I mean, he's quite frankly playing bad football. I mean, Trevor does not look competent out there. He is making some just outright horrible decisions. And it's crazy to see. And it's not like he doesn't have good coaching. Not like he doesn't have good enough weapons around him. Trevor's just playing a bad brand of football right now. And he's Trevor Lawrence. He's gonna get out of it. He's whatever he's going through is just weird. But yeah, it's not the best I've seen. And excuse me, my dog is like she is going off on some neighbors over there. But yeah, sorry, side note. Baker Mayfield, man. This dude's for real. This Bucks team's for real. And if I'm at any team and they're borderline playoff team, I don't want to play this team. They are scary and they have their star talent that's just playing fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Baker Mayfield, 2 touchdowns. You keep Baker moving into 2024, 100%. You have to keep Baker at this point. He's played himself into that. He's earned that. And these stars for the Buccaneers are just absolutely showing out. Mike Evans, 7 catches, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. He does this every game this whole season. And I don't even know his age off the top of my head, but it's incredible that he keeps doing this. He really is making the Hall of Fame case. I think he is a Hall of Famer at this point with how he's played in this 2023 season with Baker Mayfield. It's incredible stuff. And shout out to Rashad White. Probably a touchdown every week as well. He's a top 5 running back in fantasy for your championship week. And Godwin's a target machine. So you love that. And then Jaguars, all the options are really sour. Calvin Ridley gets there because there's no Zay Jones or Christian Kirk. So it's just Calvin Ridley getting 2 kind of garbage time second half touchdowns. Other than that, Travis Etienne's really been struggling. He's a scary start, 6 for 12 on the ground. So Etienne, you kind of just start because you have to. Evan Ingram, you start. He's a beast. Evan Ingram's a star. But other than that, it's scary for the Jaguars.
Yeah, no, you just said it. And yeah, I think I'm officially gonna say I'm out on the Jaguars. I do not think they will win their last couple games. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, and I don't think they should. I think this team needs to, find themselves And it's too late in the season to be playing this bad. And it's gross. And I'm a little worried on Trevor. I think he'll bounce back, but they need to find themselves because they're not the Jaguars that we expected this year.
Yeah, it's trending in the wrong direction for sure, man. It's bad stuff. And we'll get on to the next one. The Cowboys went into Miami and lost to the Dolphins 22-20. And this was a really big matchup. So it was a big, big win for the Dolphins. Respect to them for coming away with it. Really close one. CD kind of did his thing. You knew Tyreek Hill was going to do his thing. You knew Jalen Waddle was going to go out injured because he has just been an injury-prone uh, monster lately. It's crazy. He had like three different injuries in this one game. But yeah, this picture of Micah Parsons just completely getting held and no one calling it. I don't think he's had a holding call on him this entire season, which is crazy. So I guess that kind of summed up the game, and the Dolphins got the job done. Shout out to Tua. He had a solid, serviceable game to beat the Cowboys and Dak.
Yeah, Tua played a good enough point guard. I just need to talk about the Dolphins offense. It is just so crazy how Mike McDaniels runs it, and it's just the middle of the field. It's so funny how open players are. And against a good Cowboys team, they're just able to expose them just with with Mike McDaniel's motions and just the misdirection type of stuff. It just shows you how open up, how much the field can open up and how you can get a little bit more time for your quarterback to throw. Just off of simple things that Mike McDaniel does that he kind of got from that Shanahan tree. But and also before I forget that Tony Pollard goal line rush, man, and then that fumble after by the fullback. What I don't know. The Cowboys did not come to play. They did not come to play super hard. I mean, it ended up being a really good game, but it was it was a good gross game. That's going to be my takeaway. It was a good gross game. And yeah, I mean, the Dolphins ended up doing enough to squeak out of this one. Um, Gosh, but Tyreek Hill ended up getting his. Jalen Waddle got a big play, but it was kind of a gross game from both of these guys, and I was not super impressed. I don't know. That's kind of my takeaway. I'm not super impressed by either team.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas was expecting this one to be the highest scoring game of the week, and they were definitely off on that. And I think that is like the biggest takeaway we need to talk about is Tony Pollard is he's not an RB1. We've hinted at this all year. He's not an RB1. That was just embarrassing. That clip that's going around was just absolutely embarrassing. I think Zeke is more of RB1 in 2023 than Tony Pollard. So that's crazy. It kind of showed that that was just a good duo. And for the fantasy playoffs or for the fantasy championship, are you starting Pollard? I guess you kind of have to, but I mean, he only had one target in the receiving game, and I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. I don't know if I feel confident enough. He hasn't just. I mean, I feel like you have to. You kind of have to if you're that far and you have Tony Pollard. But I feel like most people have Tony Pollard, which I'm a little guilty of. I was kind of high on Tony Pollard. I was very high on Tony Pollard this offseason, and wow, he's just let me down. But yeah, I don't know if you should start him at this point. He's pretty bad. He's pretty horrible, and I think the only people you're starting is obviously CD, who's amazing, Jake Ferguson, and Dak. For the Dolphin or for the Cowboys side of things. But yeah, I'm not feeling confident. Sorry, excuse me. In Pollard at all.
Yeah, I'm not either. So I guess we'll just say you start who you start on the Cowboys, and for Pollard, we feel bad for you if you have to start him because we're personally not. And for the Dolphins, you know who you're starting. It looks like Jalen Waddle might miss a few weeks. That sucks, but everyone else is a must start for the Dolphins. And we'll move on to the next one. The Cardinals went into Chicago and lost to the Bears 27-16. Good performance from the Bears. This one really went as expected. We kind of thought the Bears were just a little bit better of a team. They'd get the job done at home. We did see Khalil Herbert have a pretty good game with no Deontay Foreman. They have so many running backs. No Deontay Foreman. Khalil Herbert did solid. It was kind of a big question as to if it was going to be Herbert or Roshan, but Herbert did his thing. Fields had a pretty good game, and Cole Kmet has been on a tear. So shout out to the Bears. They're playing some really good football after starting the season disastrous.
Yeah, the Bears are, this is like I say every single week. It's Justin Fields. This is his essentially this is his interview. This is, are you our franchise quarterback? Or are you not? And he's played pretty good. And I love the way they're using him on the design runs because that's when Justin Fields is the most comfortable, when he's moving around, when he's scrambling, I mean, Justin Fields is a really, really good runner. I mean, he went 9 for 97 and a touchdown in this one. His passing stats weren't great, but he's just doing enough to get it done. And I think he's honestly making a case for why the Bears should draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 1 overall. I think we're seriously talking after the last couple of weeks. I think Justin Fields has played good football, and I would consider, I get it's Caleb Williams, I get this Drake May this draft, but at this point, I am considering that the first overall pick should be Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Bears.
You can get into those talks. Like if the roles were reversed here, if the Cardinals had the first overall pick, we would I mean, I don't know, would you say Justin Fields just outplayed Kyler? Because we would be saying you probably just draft Marvin Harrison, you stick with Kyler, right? And I don't know. I think Justin Fields was on the same level as Kyler here. He's kind of been playing on the same level as Kyler this year. So we are getting into the area where it's at least a conversation for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation, and I think Justin Fields did. He played, a little bit more electric football, and he was able to get it done over Kyler and the Cardinals. But yeah, I think the conversation should be on the books. It shouldn't just be draft Caleb, do whatever with Justin. I think it's a serious conversation at this point, and that's kind of the takeaway from this game is and the Cardinals, you're taking Marvin Harrison Jr. if he's there. Obviously, if not, you're taking Joe Alt or Bashanu. You're hoping there's some good draft prospects available, and this is kind of the takeaway for this game.
All about the draft with these two teams. And yeah, when you go into the fantasy takeaways, James Conner leads the team in rushing and receiving. You absolutely love to see that. Trey McBride has really his worst game, but he's still kind of a start. And then for the Bears, if there's only two running backs, you start Herbert. If they all play, you don't start any. Fields is a pretty much a must start at this point, and Cole Kmet is also a must start. And we all know DJ Moore has gotten you guys to the championship. You're going to ride with him as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, let's move on from the draft to one from the draft game right here.
Yeah, we'll move on to from one draft game to another because the Broncos have just been eliminated from the playoffs essentially, and now they're looking forward to the draft. And we all know the Patriots are as well. They kind of hurt their Caleb Williams or Drake May chances by winning this one, but respect, they really came into Denver and played really, really hard. Bill Belichick had them playing well. Their defense was playing lights out. This was the Barmore game, the Christian Barmore game. Let's just get that out of the way and shout him out. He had his career high 91.8 PFF grade in this game. He had 3 sacks in 1 quarter, 4 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, 8 tackles, 2 for loss. He's a superstar, and I would say we both kind of knew it coming out of Alabama. We both kind of thought he should have been a first round pick. So fun to see him really panning out for the Patriots. And yeah, that kind of summed up the game. The Patriots defense really dominated. Russ was a struggle. It's to the point where Broncos country is almost 100% unanimously out on Russ as the future quarterback for 2024. And a week ago, it was looking like he was almost 100% back for 2024. So it couldn't have been more of a disastrous week from the Broncos. They really just had to win out against the Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders, and they couldn't do that. So it's an embarrassing loss. The players were defeated after. I wouldn't be surprised if they do lose to the Chargers and Raiders now because there's really nothing to play for. It's depressing, and it was a bad loss on Sunday Night Football. Terrible loss with everything to play for.
Yeah, definitely should not have been a game that the Broncos dropped here. This is kind of, their playoff game right here, essentially. And yeah, I mean, it was wild. The Patriots come out of nowhere. Christian Barmore, I mean, Bailey Zappi played probably his best career game. I mean, he was 25 of 33, 256, 2 touchdowns. And yeah, they did enough to knock off the Broncos who were fighting for a playoff spot. And it's just kind of wild. It's kind of wild to be saying this right now in this week. But wow, Broncos country, are we really out on? Are we really? I mean, it's not. I mean, Russell Wilson's not like he had a 4 pick game or anything. But I mean, is the train? Is it just kind of coming to a halt? Are people just? I mean, you just kind of see his potential. You see what he can do for your team. Is it just? Are you guys just really done on him? You think?
I think just Sean Payton Russell Wilson marriage isn't really working. I think there is some weird vibes going on between those two. I think that Sean Payton is the one that wants to move on of anything, like more than the Broncos. So I do think so. Russell Wilson was pretty bad in this game. He couldn't get anything going until that fourth quarter when they absolutely needed some miracles to even have a chance at the playoffs, and they got it done, but the defense didn't come through in the end. So it's hard. Like we saw, Russ has been a really solid, serviceable quarterback all year, really. And this one, Sean Payton was asking him to do too little, and it was kind of embarrassing. They were really putting the training wheels on Russ on this one, and it was just it's not a way to win. We didn't have Cortland Sutton. He went out with a concussion without even getting a catch, so I don't know how that's possible. But Sutton really being out kind of lost this game for the Broncos. If you don't have the Sutton miracle catch at the end of the game, it's not really a good formula when you can only create one turnover on the first play of the game and you don't even come away with points on it. So it was a rough, just terrible, depressing performance in 2024 is going to be a lot of questions for the Broncos. Let's say that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to next year now officially for both of these teams. And fantasy takeaway, there's not a lot. Not a whole lot in this one. I don't really know if anyone's honestly startable. On either team. I mean, I guess Demario Douglas, he got his. Zeke is kind of hit or miss. But yeah, I really don't know if there's anyone you honestly feel comfortable really starting.
Yeah, Zappy did kind of announce himself in this game. He really played good. So I would say you could start Pop Demario Douglas. It's the upside isn't crazy. He hasn't scored a touchdown all year. Hunter Henry, I would say as a start if you're really down bad for a tight end. I think he's going to be good with Zappy this week. And yeah, I think you do start Zeke just off volume. You kind of have to. And for the Broncos, it was rough. Javonte had a very terrible game. He kind of got benched for McLaughlin. It was a mess for the Broncos. And yeah, you don't really start anyone for them anymore. And just a disaster. I don't want to talk about it anymore. But we'll go to the Christmas games. The Raiders went into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs 20-14. This guy right here, Jack Jones, is Grinch. He stole Christmas from Kansas City and Mahomes. It was really fun to watch. Antonio Pierce has these guys playing with their heads on fire. This defense is all of a sudden playing lights out like a top defense. I was excited when they brought Jack Jones over because I loved him coming out of Arizona State, loved him in his rookie season with the Patriots, and I knew that Antonio Pierce would rejuvenate him because he was his high school and college coach, but I didn't know it would be to this level. He's like had a 90 PFF grade every week he's played for the Raiders, so incredible. The Las Vegas Raiders defeated the Chiefs without completing a pass after the first quarter. Like, just let that sink in. That happened, and that just kind of shows you how good the Raiders defense was and how meh and bleh the Chiefs are this year. You're on mute.
Sorry, excuse me. That stat, I can't even comprehend it. That is unreal, unheard of. And you can just kind of see the demise and the defeat in the Chiefs with Mahomes' body language, with Kelsey's body language. They're kind of just they're falling apart at the helm right now. And now they're going to be playing, quite possibly in an away playoff game, which you never see that. The Chiefs have had the first seed for like the last 5 years. And from a Chargers and a Broncos standpoint, I think we're high-fiving and we're feeling good about this one. Obviously, we do not like the Raiders, but this was great to see. This was awesome to see. It was fun it was fun to see Patrick Mahomes and get beat up, and it's just ultimately a game of how the Chiefs season has been, and you can see it in their body language. You can kind of see the defeat in their faces, and yeah, they're not playing good football, and right now, the run first Chiefs, and yeah, I don't know, just Travis Kelsey, he's not doing very. I mean, no one's doing good on the Chiefs, and it's kind of crazy. And yeah, shout out to the Raiders because they outplayed the Chiefs in this one. That defense ultimately carried them to that victory, and it was awesome.
Yep. Shout out to Antonio Pierce. His message to the team in this one was hatred, violence, and pain. And it checks out when you watch this team. They literally play with hatred. They are just talking crap. They're screaming in your face. You can, if you watch this play right here, you literally see Jack Jones talking to Patrick Mahomes as he's walking into the end zone and his mouthpiece is falling out. He's just talking crap to Mahomes. And he goes and gives the ball to a baby and takes it back in his Raider Grinch self. It's just fun what the Raiders are doing. It's really fun, honestly. And I love what Antonio Pierce is doing. And he is a coach. He's an NFL head coach next year, 100%.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. Shout out to the Raiders. You stole Christmas from the Chiefs, and it was magnificent.
Needed to see that Taylor Swift consoling or holding Brittany Mahomes. That meme's going to be incredible for years to come. But we'll move on to the next one. The Giants went into Philly and lost to the Eagles 33-25, but it wasn't a pretty win for the Eagles. It was a close one. DeVito got benched in this one. It was a very popular benching. A lot of people probably got some Tommy Cutler shirts in the mail on Christmas Day, and he got benched the same day. A little bit depressing for that. I don't know. I don't even think DeVito was bad. He didn't throw a pick or fumble or anything. It's just they could not score. So I understand the benching. Tyrod did. He was able to get more production, but yeah, the Eagles come away with a pretty gross win. My takeaway in this game watching it is James Bradbury. I almost feel bad like how much he's completely fallen off. It's pretty sad. He was a top 5 corner in the NFL last year, and I love James Bradbury, but he is just allowing touchdowns every game. It's bad. This Eagles secondary is not pretty, and it's bad football. Jalen Hurts hasn't really had a good game in a month. It's bad.
Yeah, I mean it's it is crazy. You're right. Jalen Hurts really hasn't had a good game in a month, and it was not pretty out there from the Eagles. I don't think there's much to take away from the Giants. It was just kind of disaster class. But yeah, I mean this Eagles team. I mean, it's a little scary. It's scary, for December football. It's scary for January football. You just don't know. You don't know what you're getting. It's not very consistent. And they kind of remind me of kind of like a Chiefs a little bit of that class, but they're a little bit better team. They're kind of nitty-gritty, finding a way to win, which is ultimately good. They're actually finding a way to actually come out with a win. But yeah, I'm a little bit panicking on the Eagles, just a little bit.
Yeah, and like there's not too many takeaways in this one because it went how we expected it. We knew the Eagles would win. We knew it wasn't going to be like a domination because the Eagles, were on a 3-game losing streak. They weren't playing great football. But yeah, when you go into fantasy takeaways, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, both are stars. You start them. Dallas Goedert actually has a really good game as well. So you start him. DeAndre Swift finally gets into the end zone, doesn't fall down on the 1 yard line for once. So that's awesome. You start Swift. And then for the Giants, it's just Saquon, and there's no other takeaways. Waller is washed, by the way.
Yes, 100% agree. And I'm excited to see the Eagles next week to see how they kind of. I'm excited to see the Eagles for the rest of the season because it's kind of they need to prove something.
A lot to prove moving forward after these rough performances. But we'll get on to the last game of the week, the Super Bowl preview, as everyone coined it. The Ravens went into San Fran and beat the Niners 33-19. Stores called this one. Great stuff from Lamar Jackson, the new MVP favorite, just going into San Fran, using his feet, making some really good splash plays on the ground. And he used his arm as well. Zay Flowers was electric in this one. He really bounced back from a few rough weeks, and he had 9 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. He really boosted the Ravens in the intermediate game. It seemed like he was just chain moving, getting a first down every time he touched it. So you love to see that. And yeah, just a rough performance from the Niners. Brock Purdy, our goof of the week, 4 picks, 255 yards, 19 for 32. Just not good enough. He started the game off well. He was feeding Kittle, and they did good. But once those picks started coming, he was in his head, and a lot of the picks were, tip balls, very volatile stuff. So Twitter scouts can kind of chill on the Purdy hate, but yeah, shout out to Lamar. It was awesome.
Yeah, we got a new number one in town, and it is the Ravens. They are the best team in the NFL via last week, and it was awesome to see. And Lamar is the MVP. Followed by Christian McCaffrey, who had himself a hell of a game in this one, 14 for 103 and a touchdown, also 6 for 28 through the air. But yeah, kind of a wild game. Not the score I expected. I thought it would come down to the final wire, but the Ravens just quite frankly dominated. It was a dominant game, and it was a statement game from the Ravens on why they are the best team in the NFL, and they took that title from the 49ers. So it was awesome to see. And Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, also, great game from them. Lamar Jackson getting it done through the ground. It was just a real statement game for the Ravens, and John Harbaugh being one of the more, better coaches in the NFL, with Mike McDonald just absolutely having a hell of a game plan for this Ravens defense to go against this electric 49ers offense. And yeah, just game of the week. It was awesome. It was fun to see. It was fun to see the Ravens, kind of take that title away from the 49ers. And it's going to be interesting because we might see these teams, these two teams in the Super Bowl. So this might be our Super Bowl preview, and it might be, kind of a sleeper game for the 49ers, but we'll see.
Yeah, I wanted to shout out Mike McDonald as well because that Ravens defense is playing great football, even against this juggernaut of an offense, like the most dynamic offense we've seen in the last decade. They allowed some yards, and they weren't breaking in the end zone. They were bending, not breaking. Kyle Hamilton came away with some great plays. Marcus Williams got a pick at the end. They're playing great on that defensive end to complement Lamar. And you go into fantasy, there's not really many takeaways. You start every Niner. We don't need to talk about that. They're not going to have a disaster performance probably again. And then for the Ravens, Zay Flowers is a start. Isaiah Likely is a start. Lamar Jackson's a big start. And then I think Odell is like a drop candidate. And then, yeah, other than that, just a really good game. It was fun to see the upset, and yeah, really fun Christmas game. It delivered.
Yep. Sneak peek for the Super Bowl, maybe. We'll see.
Lamar Jackson came in there on Grinchmas and did his thing. But any extra hot takes before we get out of here?
Panthers. Just kidding. We always have to have a Panthers one. Come on, we got to think of something. So I'm going to give you two exit hot takes real quick. Because I got to throw out my Panthers one. Bryce Young will be a top 10 quarterback next year with a competent team. And my last hot take is going to be that the Chiefs are hot trash and they're not a good football team anymore.
You can't argue with either. I think both are locks, so I don't even think they're hot takes. I think the Chiefs are just not the same football team. That's obvious, and I think Bryce Young is going to be a legendary quarterback. I think Bryce Young's going to be a legend. Let's just say that. I agree. I agree with those actually. I like those.
Yes, sir. Those are my two hot takes for the Christmas week, for my Grinch week. So we'll see how they pan out.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our Week 16 recap episode. Just a few more of these, and we're on to a lot of draft content. So yeah, check out the NFL Seekers podcast on all platforms. Like, subscribe if you like, and thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Sure. Peace.